Greetings everyone, welcome back to part 2 of the Super Robot Taisen Retrospective. Today I'll be looking at the sequel to Band Presto's mecha strategy RPG, Super Robot Taisen Original Generation 2 for the Game Boy Advance. The game originally released in Japan on February 3rd, 2005, 3 years after the release of the original, but for those of us living outside the land of the rising sun, we didn't see a release until November 21st, 2006, which, if you recall from my previous video, is only 4 months after the North American release of the original Super Robot Taisen. Strange release dates aside, the game was developed by Band Presto and published by Atlas in the Americas. The game, as you may have guessed, is a direct sequel to Super Robot Taisen Original Generation, hence the 2 in the title. OG2 features more original character and mecha designs of Band Presto and many returning ones. I won't be pulling any punches. Super Robot Taisen Original Generation 2 improves upon its predecessor in every conceivable way. It's bigger, better, and so much damn fun to play through. Super Robot Taisen OG2 takes place 6 months after the conflict of the previous game, and to avoid any spoilers, I'll be as vague as possible discussing the game's narrative. But in order to fully appreciate the plot, you'll need to have some sort of understanding of Original Generation's plot. Play the game, watch any of the anime adaptations, read it on the wiki, but you will need to know the plot in order to get everything out of the sequel's story. I say this because Super Robot Taisen Original Generation 2's narrative has a lot going on, and the game does not stop to coddle newcomers. You either understand the plot and you can follow along, or you are hopelessly lost within the insanity occurring in this story. The game does away with its dual protagonist-driven narrative of the original. This time around, we follow the plot through the eyes of Kyosuke, Nanbu, and the ATX team as they get caught up in a conflict unlike anything they have ever seen. Throughout the story, you'll be seeing some familiar faces from the previous game, as well as many new characters getting caught up with the various conflicts in the game. You will fight a variety of different enemies, from a warring faction of a certain group that has the same abbreviation as a comic company, to alien invaders, ancient monsters, and an elite mecha unit from another dimension. So yeah, to incorporate such a wide variety of enemies for you to battle with on a turn-by-turn basis, the story has to work overtime to introduce each enemy faction and a reason to do battle with them. And as such, many characters don't get a lot of time in the spotlight, particularly a lot of the returning characters since they already had their time to shine in the previous game. To the game's credit, ditching the dual protagonist system does allow the game to properly focus on the whole overarching story, and at the end of the day, the game's plot is executed as best as it could for being presented in text dumps. All in all, the game's narrative is good, despite some of my criticisms of how it's presented and how it progresses, but by the end of the game, you'll become attached to many of the pilots and will be invested enough within the game's story to see it through till the end. That's enough of discussing the game's story. Let's move on to the true strength of the series, and this game in particular, the gameplay. The strategic turn-based gameplay of the first game returns with many of the systems remaining unchanged, but they're much more polished than before. Managing skills and energy for your pilots in their respective mechs has become much more integral than before, and Super Robot Taisen OG2 has a much better difficulty curve, and because of these various changes, the game as a whole feels a lot more balanced. But what's really made the gameplay more enjoyable is the flashier battle animations and the improved user interface and menus. Normally, I don't feel like graphics can affect the gameplay of a game, but here I feel is an exception. The improved UI makes it easier and much more enjoyable to plan out your attacks and navigate through the various menus you'll need to go through to manage your pilots and mechs. The battle animations and overall graphics have also improved substantially from the original generation. The new animations and graphics make each individual battle much more engaging to watch and make each successful attack more rewarding to pull off. I found myself rarely skipping battle animations this time around, except for the sake of time for recording gameplay footage of this review. So to summarize, the gameplay is better paced, easier to engage yourself into, and overall just as more fun to play than the previous Super Robot Taisen, and this is large in part to the improved graphic and various user interfaces. As well, battle mastery has returned from the previous game, rewarding you and changing your game's overall difficulty depending on accomplishing certain and often specific objectives on each chapter. Like the last game, collecting these battle masteries unlocks new weapons, mechs, and the true final level to the game. And just like last time, there's a new game plus that is unlocked after clearing the game once, and some battle masteries are exclusive to playthroughs on New Game Plus. And if that wasn't enough incentive to play the game multiple times, there are also multiple routes through the game, and each route has exclusive characters, story scenes, mechs, and completely different battles to play through. Suffice to say, Super Robot Taisen Original Generation 2 has a lot of content to offer, and it's all worth experiencing. Musically, the game is on par with the first Original Generation, which if you've seen my review of that game is a good thing, as I felt the music in Original Generation is amazing, and I feel the same way here. But having said that, I wish there were more new themes introduced, but the themes here are on par with the ones that came before, so on a whole, the music and sound is equal to the original game. Super Robot Taisen Original Generation 2 does what all great sequels should do: take everything that made the original great and make it better, as well as fixing what may have been wrong with it, and this game does just that. Although the narrative is a bit overwhelming, it still delivers where it counts, and the game completely improves almost everything from the first game aside from the music, which is on the same level, and also, the game has insane replay value. So ultimately, I absolutely recommend Super Robot Taisen Original Generation 2 to anyone with the slightest interest in strategy RPGs, quality portable games, or mecha anime. This is a game I would define as a must-play. For me personally, this is my favorite game of the Super Robot Taisen and the Super Robot Wars series as a whole. The game isn't overly difficult to find and typically sells for around $20 for the cartridge alone. As well, in 2007, a PlayStation 2 remake of both original generation games released as a Japanese exclusive title. This remake features the usual goodies like improved graphics and sound, along with a few extra features. Sadly, as I said earlier, it is exclusive to Japan, but the PlayStation 2 copy is pretty inexpensive to import if you are so inclined. Well, I believe that wraps up this installment of the Super Robot Taisen Retrospective. Join me for the final part as I'll be reviewing one of the most unique RPGs on the Nintendo DS, as well as the final game of the Super Robot Taisen series to be released in the West. This has been Darren from the Gaming Pilgrimage. Till next time.